and welcome to that 90s Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, James Sunstone, and today our special guest, he is the inaugural NXT champion, and he's the UK's own Joel Redman. How you doing, Joe?
Good, not bad. A bit tired today. I've been up since 4 for work, but I'm okay.
Wow.
Cup of tea here. I'm gonna keep me awake a bit. I'll be fine.
I've just had a cup of coffee, so I'm not too bad at the minute.
I would go for the coffee, but it keeps me awake. I think I'd stay awake too long. So the nice English tea has gone down better for me today.
Yeah, I'm normally a couple of coffees in the morning and a cup of tea on the night time, but tonight I thought I just need a coffee just to, I mentioned to you today, earlier, I've just had a long drive today, so I thought I just need a bit of a coffee just to boost myself.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from.
Cool. So I suppose we'll go to the beginning. So your childhood, was you a fan of wrestling growing up?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No?
We didn't. I haven't even had a television. I don't remember watching TV as a kid. I grew up. My family are all farmers from Devon. My parents, when I was a kid, bought a house up a sort of dirt track away from the farm. Didn't have any, I didn't have any TV signal, I don't think, but it was a very derelict sort of run-down house, and they turned it into quite a nice place to live. So as a kid, I was always outside, and my granddad being a farmer, and my dad being a farmer, I was sort of roped into chores from as long as I can remember, from a very early age. So I was outside, getting muddy in the woods and building the tree house, and out hunting with my dad when I could, I guess, and farming, and I was always outdoors. Never inside, never playing video games or anything.
No. So what got you interested in growing up? Like, when did you start training?
I don't know. I was sort of being that sort of isolated and where I was. There was a wrestler called Chris Andrews, a very good wrestler. His brother Sam was a wrestler as well. And they lived just a couple of hills over from me. So I'd walk across to their house, another farm in Devon. And they were into wrestling. And I think I probably went around there and watched Raw or something on TV. And I might have seen my first glimpse of it there. But my first memories of wrestling was watching it live in Exeter and Corn Exchange. And that was just sort of dragged along with Chris and Sam, so my friends. And I went there and I watched the show, I don't know, 11 or 12. And I remember James Mason being on the show and Chad Collier and some of those guys. And I think that's the technical style grabbed me. And I'd played a lot of rugby as a kid, and I'd done a lot of judo. I'd always sort of grown up doing judo. So I had a sort of interest in sort of grappling and stuff. So that technical style just got me from the get-go, really. And that was my introduction to wrestling.
Yeah, and eventually you found your way to, as you was growing up, you training. And I noticed that one of the early tags you actually done was with Mark Haskins, and he's a great talent. So how did it come about, like you two meeting and then started tag teaming?
So I started, it was meant to be a wrestling school in Exeter, and the guy who was going to run it pulled out last second. So when I think I was 15, I contacted a company called Revolution British Wrestling. And I said, I'll run the school for you, sort of thing, as a kid. And we just brought down like Andy Simmons and Phil Powers, and they all come down, Sammy Ray, and they would train us in this leisure centre on the mats. And then eventually the UK kid came down, who was trained by Shawn Michaels. And he started a school in Portsmouth. So we drive from Devon to Portsmouth on a Saturday to train. We trained for like 2 hours and drive back home again. And there was one lad that came from Penzance, and he'd get a train from Penzance to Exeter, and then he'd sit in the car to Portsmouth. But that's how, back then there wasn't as many schools. So you had to do that. You had to travel 3 or 4 hours to learn how to wrestle. That's the way it was. So we just went there, and then Chris Andrews is like a Greek god. If you ever see his physique, he was built really, really well. I was a fat kid. I was very overweight as a kid. I didn't really get any bookings. I watched Chris get all the bookings, and rightfully so. He's a more naturally gifted wrestler than me, much better body, but I'd have to sit there and watch. One time, Mark Sloan of the FWA Academy was looking for wrestlers for some of his shows, and he asked the UK kid if you got anybody, and I think UK kid just sort of threw it to me because Chris was busy and Sam was busy, so we'll throw Joel in there, and I was a terrible wrestler, but I was a hard worker with the ring, and I put the ring up really well, and I'd worked really hard, and I wanted to learn, and I think Mark saw that, and that's where Mark Sloan sort of invited me to come down and train with those boys at the Super 8 training when the FWA Academy closed, and Haskins is one of those guys there. So me and Haskins moved to Portsmouth together. He lived in the Cotswolds, Farringdon. So we moved down to Portsmouth, just got a rundown little flat together, didn't have any money. Like, I remember sleeping on the floor for the first couple of months. We couldn't afford a bed. And I didn't even have electric for a while to get some money together to pay the electric bill. But that's just how it was. And then we trained like 5 times a week, and we'd work in like a nightclub picking up glasses, or, it was just making ends meet really, but it made you be a good wrestler because we had to do well at wrestling to make any money to sort of pay the bills. So it was a good way of doing it. And you look, Haskins is world class. He's one of the best in the world. So to be around him on a regular basis and training with him and watching how he wrestles, because he's naturally very gifted, he sort of rubs off into you a little bit.
Yeah, like growing up, like, so I grew up a fan, and like I used to watch, like, the Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warriors, and that, and these larger than life figures. But I didn't really understand like the hard work that actually goes into becoming a wrestler. And when you hear stories like what you've just explained, and the likes of William Regal, and I've interviewed Nicole just recently, and like the things he had to do and things like that, you don't realize till you start talking to wrestlers that amount of hard work and like the sacrifices they have to make. Even like the Rock, he was on like a piston mattress and he had $7 to claim at one point.
It makes you successful. I mean, when I was 16, I think I went away on the sort of holiday camps for the first time with Phil Powers and his team. And, I didn't wrestle, obviously. I just refereed, but I'd sort of almost be like a bit of a dog's body. They treated me well, but I was a bit of a dog's body. And you just referee sometimes. Now, if you were lucky, they get you in the ring before and they teach you a few things. They show you a few holds and reversals and stuff. But, I think it's a good way of getting into the business. But there wasn't very many schools. So there wasn't many people coming in, so they were sort of like, they get rid of you pretty quick if you weren't very good, and they'd end up with the guys that were serious about it.
Yeah. And eventually you make your way towards Premier Promotions. So that was that was a big deal. So what was it like when you got the call up? Was like, we want you to start working some of our shows?
Yeah, that's like one of my fondest memories of wrestling, really. I mean, I was a teenager when I was in Pro Promotions, and I think the first match was me and Sloan against Steve Gray and Mouse Sanders, and then the next one was like Johnny Kidd, and then there was Danny Boy Collins, Bobby Brookside, Doug. It was just the who's who of wrestling. And again, I was never a natural wrestler really. I struggled a lot, and I was very, very green, completely out of my depth. But it's kind of like sink or swim, I guess. And you go in there with those guys, and they rag you around for 6 rounds, and I'd lose 2-0, but every time something would rub off on me. It just could be a couple of holds or just listening to the crowd, or just something would just rub off a little bit. And it was such a good experience. And, I'm really grateful for John Fremantle for, I guess, seeing potential in me and giving me those sort of opportunities.
Yeah, one of the guys who done some work with him as well was Doug Williams, which for every British wrestler and every British fan, he's such an inspiration to everyone. So did you spend much time in the ring with Doug Williams, or even in the locker room just learning from him?
Yeah, loads of matches with Doug. I was really lucky that I had his last match for All Star in Gravesend. I think it was the second to last match. He did a match in Germany maybe after that, and that was his final match before he put the boots away. So it was like his second to last match. That was really cool to wrestle in there. And I'd always sort of looked up to Doug, and I did know a show in 2008 in the Coventry Sky Dome, and like I never would have done that show if it wasn't for Doug. Like, again, Doug saw something in me from a young age, and he gave me the opportunity at Noah to be the opener with Aoki. We did the 20-minute draw, and that opened a lot of doors for me. It actually in turn, whatever it was, 11 years later, got me a job at All Japan. So like it's done a lot for me, that match for my career, and that was all down to Doug. It was all down to him really.
Yeah, he's one of the greats, and and
he's a gentleman too. He's an amazing wrestler, but he's so down to earth and humble, and he's what you should be. He's what you should aspire to be in the ring and outside the ring. What you should be in the changing rooms as well.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I spoke to Nicole this about a month ago, and we spoke about Doug Williams, and he said, I wouldn't be anywhere without Doug Williams. If without him, I wouldn't have had a career. So it's nice. Everyone has the same opinion of Doug Williams. I would love to have him on the show one day, but like a 10-hour interview.
But I mean, I've spoke to like Eddie Ryan. We're very good friends, me and Eddie Ryan. And if we're at shows with Doug, as you would do, we will go up to Doug and ask him for his advice on our matches. Please, Doug, have you got anything? And he'll always sort of say to us that there's nothing I can really tell you boys anymore. You guys kind of know what you're doing. And he said it's a lot of the other lads that are new in the job now that don't come and ask me for advice or feedback, and they're the ones that should be. And maybe that's an old thing that we don't do anymore. That when I started, it was very commonplace to go up to the older guys and ask for advice and ask for their opinion, because people don't want to really give it to you. It is dog eat dog, this business. You need to make connections, and you need to approach wrestlers and ask them. And it's kind of been lost a little bit in this country, which is a shame. It is changing a bit now, I think, but there was a period where you found a lot of guys wouldn't do that. They need to. That's how you get better.
Yeah. And another chap you wrestled around this time as well was Party Marty Skell. So what was it like acting with him at the time?
Yeah, it was good. I remember some of those tag matches, me and Haskins against him and Zach, and yeah, I remember them being like. I look back at them now, I probably cringe on some of those matches, but at the time, I think they were good, and they were getting real good exposure for us on the sort of internet community, which was cool. And you look at the four of us that had good careers since those matches. So I mean, we all went on to do good things, which is quite nice to look back at it now and see where we went from there. Yeah, Marty he's a great wrestler. He's found his niche in the villain thing. He's really come into his own. He was always a great wrestler, but he needed that character to go to the top level, and he's found a really good character, and he's really invested a lot of time into it. So yeah, he's brilliant. I remember I had a wrestling and really was kicking him too hard once on Instagram and knocking him silly, which I would still apologise to this day for. But yeah, he's a great wrestler.
And you mentioned him earlier, Robbie Brookside, which for British fans, one of the all-time greats. So what was it like sitting under the learning tree of him and like wrestling him? Yeah,
great. I mean, in the first match for Robbie, I was probably 18, and I think he went to give me like a rolling crutch, like a schoolboy. And he went. Normally you'd roll backwards, and I sat down and I broke his ribs in the match. Wow. And he comes to train us in NXT years later. And he obviously come there as the trainer, and he just knew me straight away as the rib breaker. It was the first thing he said to me was how I broke his ribs at Premiere in 2007 or something. And I was like, oh god, that's never going to die. Accidents happen, I guess.
And I can imagine, like you said, traveling up and down the UK, you must have some pretty fun road stories, like driving the venues and around the holiday camps. Any fun road story off the top of your head, what you can think of?
No, there's lots of good stories. I mean, some of them I wouldn't want to put on a podcast. I don't know. not for my sake, but for some of the other people's sake. But yeah, it's the life of a wrestler, and yeah, I can't think of stuff now, but I can think of some good ribs. I remember I did a good rib on a guy called Gilligan Gordon, and he did some shows, and I was running some shows in Teignmouth in the Carlson Theatre. It's like an old theatre hall, and I had this big stack of like rolled up, like it was fake £20 notes, but they looked really good, real genuine notes. And I put it in his bag, and all the boys went back home. And I rang Yeston Rees, who's good mates with Gilligan Gordon. And I said, "Oh, Yeston, I've got a problem here. The police have called me. Someone stole £1,000 from the box office." And they rang the police, and they're investigating it. And obviously, Gilligan's opened his kit bag when he's got home, and he's seen this wad of notes. And he thinks someone's planting the money on him, so he's panicking back at his house. We leave it a few days before we broke the news that it's actually fake notes; they're not real. And it was just a rib, but that was a good one. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of stories, but it's a good life, we've missed it this year. We've missed being on the holiday camps and the travelling, and yeah, that's when you go with a good team of guys and you got a good car for. That's one of the highlights of wrestling, really, is being able to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And well, there you go. In 2012, WWE came calling FCW. So how did you come out? Did you do a tryout match, or did they send some scouts over to come and have a look at you?
I think they'd asked Drew McDonald to sort of get in touch with me, and they were interested in seeing me. So I saw him once at a training thing in Nottingham, and he approached me there and just said they've been looking to have a look at you, they've heard about you, and fill in this form online, and we'll get you along to a tryout. And I went to one in Manchester, and it didn't go particularly well, but they said come back to London to the O2, and we'll look at you again and see what we think. And I sort of came back in a bit better shape, and it was better for me. The first one was like a cold match, just getting there with someone to wrestle, and it didn't work well. The guy I was wrestling, we didn't mix well at the time. And then when I went back to the O2, it was just tag in, tag out, just put holes on each other, just mat work and show some aggression, and it was everything that I've sort of been trained how to do, really, and it was perfect for me. And yeah, they gave me a contract there. It was the same contract as Paige, signed at the same time.
Was it the same day? Yeah.
Same day, yeah, same day. Oh, cool. But that was a good experience. It was nice in a way to rebuild in my dad. And my dad played, real good rugby, and he tore his knee and didn't play anymore. And I played rugby as a kid, and I think he would have liked me to have played rugby more. And I sort of gave it up to be a wrestler. And when you come and watch your son in front of 50 people in a village hall wrestling, it's cool, but it's not serious, right? It doesn't look like a serious job. So when I got offered the contract with WWE and I was going to move to Florida, it was nice to be able to call him and say they offered me a job, and I'm going to move to Tampa, and it was just a nice justification, really, for what I'd chosen to do for my life. And that was the best bit for me. And a couple of the lads that were there in WWE, when I was sitting backstage, coming up to me and saying, "I watched your work today," and You remind us of a Dynamite Kid, which I'm nothing like Dynamite Kid, but it reminded me of a Dynamite Kid, which was cool. For a British guy to hear that, you always think that's pretty cool. He's one of the sort of real icons of British wrestling.
Yeah. What was the the big difference between Devon and Florida?
Oh yeah, massive difference. Yeah, from a farm to a big city was a big change. But
so, what was it like stepping through the doors of like FCW for the first time? Like, obviously, a lot more people's really connected with NXT now. They're more used to that, but FCW never had half the mainstream that NXT does. So, like, what was FCW like at the time?
Yeah, it was just daunting, like a very daunting. I was lucky that I knew Bram from England.
Oh yeah.
So Tom. So I'd messaged him and found out where he was living. So I moved into the same complex and I went around his house the first day and he sort of sat me down and told me like, this is a good guy. This guy be wary of. This, he sort of gave me the ins on who was going to be a nice guy there and who was the guys to buddy up with a little bit. And so I had an idea of what to expect from people when I went in, but everyone was okay. But it's competitive there. But in FCW, there was like 30 of us. There was 30 people. So you think, well, yeah, this is pretty cool. My chances of going up to the main roster are pretty good here, if I do well. And my first session with me and Martin Stone were put in the beginners class, and I guess they could tell we'd wrestled for a while, and they bumped us right up into a much higher class straight away. And we were working the house shows that weekend, so they just got us straight onto the house shows. And yeah, it was good in that terms. But at the same time, getting that sort of treatment was bad because you can rub some of the other guys up the wrong way, and they think you're getting a bit of a push when it is what it is. But it was a good experience. No, when I look back at it now, you think of some of the guys that I was there training with, like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt and all these guys that were there with me. They're great careers now, so it's cool to look back and think I was there with them at the same time when they were training and sort of training with them and having house show matches with them, and then you look at them now.
Yeah, and the one guy you did have a couple of matches with, I noticed in FCW was Big E, and I love Big E. I think he should be like pushed to the top. He's got such a personality, but I can imagine that same personality is backstage as well. I can imagine he's just such a fun guy to be around with.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. He's quite quiet though backstage. He's quite. Really? He's a good guy. He's one of the good guys. You get. I don't know. I've always said with Americans, and it's not a stereotype at all because I like Americans. I'm not trying to knock them, but I think you got one or the other of Americans. You've either got the very loud, it's not arrogant, but very overconfident Americans. Yeah. So he's not the sort of cowboys. He's sort of real quiet, down to earth guys, and there's not really much middle ground, And not that Big E's a cowboy, but he's a very down to earth person. He's very quiet in the back, and he's very he'll speak when he needs to speak. He's not too much of a big showman in the changing rooms, which is what I prefer. I get on better with those people. So yeah, but he was great to work, and he's stupidly strong. We used to train at John Cena's gym at Hard Knock South, and there was a 1-ton club thing, and he was the strongest guy of all the boys there. He was just a freak. His bench press was so strong, but good guy to get around.
Cool. And eventually FCW transitioned into NXT. So was there much of a difference at first when they started changing like the name of the show and the formats and everything?
We started going to Full Sail to do the tapings, so it was just a lot bigger. And then obviously the Performance Center was huge contrast. It's hard to even explain. FCW was like a little warehouse in Tampa, and it was no air conditioning. And if it was hot, if you were lucky, they might open the shutter door. But hot in Tampa is seriously hot, and a shutter door being open in a steel or tin roof warehouse doesn't do very much. So the heat inside that building in the summer was crazy. But I quite like that sort of rough and ready thing, being a farm boy, I guess. And then the NXT Performance Center was just all top of the range, $4 million place with air conditioning and changing rooms and showers and all this stuff that we never had in FCW. That was kind of different.
Good. And because obviously NXT to begin with was kind of like a game show. You used to have your rookies with your coaches. Was there ever any talk of like you participating in one of them seasons? Because they had like 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think that probably was just happening or just about to finish happening when I went out there. So I got there, FCW tapings were still happening for FCW sort of TV, and it was just moving into the NXT sort of TV taping. So I was probably there, I don't know, 2-3 months, and they started filming the NXT sort of weekly episodes at Full Sail. I can remember. I can remember the first episode they did. I remember the tournament Seth Rollins won for the belt. I remember that heavyweight tournament being early on in my days there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. And they renamed you Oliver Gray when you went to transition to NXT. So where did Oliver Gray come from?
They just said give us a list of 10 famous British wrestlers' surnames. And I've always been a big Steve Gray fan. I started studying wrestling. So Steve, yeah, his name was straight up there, top of the list. It was Gray. I don't know what else I had. Kid, Saint, whatever, Rocco. I don't know what it was. But it was like a list of 10 famous British wrestler surnames. And then they just wanted like a traditional English first name. So I put Richard or whatever. I mean, Oliver was there and they just said Oliver Gray, which was cool. A lot of the boys would say Oliver Closed Off, like the joke they all have, but Oliver Grace was all right with me. And it was Steve Gray. It was the Gray name, so I quite like. And yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, and I presume Dusty was there at the same time. So
yeah.
Was Dusty like interacting with him and like learning under each tree, I suppose.
Yeah, he's better to teach you promos than Dusty Rhodes, and he was the promo class. So we'd I think it was a Wednesday evening or something. We'd go there and do our promos, and he was in charge of that. So yeah, really good. He's just trying to get his attention though, just trying to do a good promo. I'm not a good. I'm a terrible interview. I've always been bad at that, but with his help, it was getting better. We were trying to find a bit of a character for me. And I don't know. I think for me, my first session there, because it was Tom Pritchard had just left. So what was his name? Bill DeMott had just started being the head coach. So it was like his first day. They had like a tryout, an open tryout. He was next door. So they had Perry Saturn teach us for the first few sessions. And I liked Perry Saturn as a kid. So that was kind of cool to be with him. And then Dean Malenko would come in and train us sometimes. I was a big Malenko fan, so that was good. And my first coach for the first 6 months was Ricky Steamboat, which is a big deal, I guess, if you're a wrestler to be trained by Ricky Steamboat. Especially for me, I've made most of my career out of being a sort of blue eye, so he's the best of all time. So if you can be trained by him, how to sell and how to do comebacks and hope spots, doesn't really get much better than that. And you do take it for granted when you're there. You kind of forget sometimes that you get this opportunity and you're around these people, and it is just taken for granted, and it shouldn't be. There's things that I've gone in my time, and I wish I'd asked more questions and learned more from them, but it's just hindsight, isn't it? It's one of those things.
Yeah, and you mentioned Bill DeMott, which he got released because of some allegations about his training sessions went a bit too far. And I don't know if you had many sessions with him, but was it a case that he was being cruel to be kind, or was it a case he was just over the top when it came to his sessions?
Oh, good one. Good question. That my name was in the letter, so the guy, I'm probably breaking all the kayfabe. Luchasaurus, So Luchasaurus was the guy in NXT. So he wrote the letter, which I guess got Bill in trouble. And my name was in the letter, which was crazy. Right. I had no problems with Bill. I think it was some thing where he told me to wrestle naked or something. It was complete bollocks. Like it wasn't true at all. And I just messaged Bill straight away and said, I hope you know that's nothing to do with me. Now, I always liked Bill from day one, and I've got nothing to do with that. And he messaged me back and said he knew I wasn't involved, and he knew that there wasn't any problem there. But I had no problems with Bill, and he was tough on us. He was really tough, and there was days when he wanted our conditioning to be good, so we would do conditioning days, and they were tough. I can't put that any other way. That if you were sick in a bin, you were getting away lightly. But that is how it should be. You're at the top level. If you're there and you're signed for a contract, and we were getting decent money, you're expected to be a top level athlete. And if you're not, then you be shown the door. So you need to, and you only get better when you're out your depth. So if someone pushes you in conditioning to the point where you are completely out your depth and you are blown up, well, that's how you get better. So. Yeah. He was a tough coach, I guess, in ways, but at the same time, he was a man. And that's what I liked about him. He was a real man, and you could go to him with legit problems, and he'd sit you down, and he'd give you some real good advice, and it wasn't too much sort of bullshit that you get with some other people or other coaches, and he was just straight to the point. And I always got on with Bill. I had no problems with Bill at all. It's a shame he lost his job, and he was never a problem with me. I really like the guy.
Yeah, a lot of them guys, I don't think they'll be able to handle the British skills if that's the case.
Well, it's just hard conditioning. It's like anything. It's like anything in the world. If you go somewhere and you fail, there's two ways you can deal with that. You can either get better and improve, or you can bitch about it and complain. And a lot of people, the easy way out is just to bitch about it and say he was a bully or he was mistreating us, Where the truth is probably you weren't in the shape you should have been in. You should have got yourself in shape. That was, that's the way it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar story with me. Like I'm a builder, and when I was 16, I went to just community college, learn how to be a bricklayer.
Yeah.
And the first couple of weeks, you're in the upstairs doing your paperwork, health and safety, blah blah. But then, like after 3 weeks, you're on the workshop floor, and we used to have like our tutors, and they'll just be like, "Yeah, you're laying that brick right, you're laying this wrong, and that." And there used to be the one guy, and he was from London. I forgot his name, Mr. Quinn. And he would come around to me and he'd be like, "You can do a better job than that, James." But hard, but you mean well. And so I'll be like, and like as a 16-year-old, I'll be like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So I would take the other lads there. They would just drop out like flies and be like, "Oh, he's bullying us." I'm like, "No, he's just actually telling you what to do. Grow a spine." So I can imagine it's the same thing.
Exactly the same thing. And like I said to you before, we went on the air. Like I've started coaching for Rev Pro, and I've just opened my wrestling school here in Salisbury. And I absolutely have a passion for teaching wrestling to people, and I love wrestling. Obviously, I've done it all my life, so I love to teach wrestling. But you have got to kind of read. One of the skills of being a coach is reading your students, and some people take advice differently, and you've got to kind of work out what gets the most out of people. And for me, I like to be told straight up to the point. If you tell me I'm rubbish, I won't bitch about it. I'll go and get better. That's the way I am. I'm competitive as a person. Whereas some people, you do need to have a different approach, and that's not a bad thing. That's just the way that we all have different characteristics and different ways of being mentored. And maybe Bill at times just didn't read certain people at the school the right way. And if he had realised that they were going to take his stuff that way, I'm sure he would have changed slightly and approached them at a different angle. But that's just part of the skills of being a coach, I guess.
Yeah. But eventually they teamed you up together with Adrian Neville, which everyone knows him as PAC. So what was it like when these obviously two English lads being put together? So you must have been pretty chuffed with that.
Yeah, great. I mean, when you're out there, you're on your own a bit because you are, I was 23 when I went there, so early 20s, and I'm in Tampa there, and you don't know many people because it is dog eat dog. Don't make a lot of close friends. So all the British boys really stick together. So me and Martin and Tom, Brown, and you had sort of like a guy called Zulu Warrior Ozzy who came over, and a guy called Joker BRAH who runs OTT came over. Whenever they'd come over, because the way Tom had looked after me when I went out there, I sort of felt like that was my job next. So when Joe came over, he'd stay at mine when he first got there, and I'd take him to get his national insurance number and find him a place to live and do all the things that you kind of need someone to do. You don't realise until you sign that it really, really helps if you've got someone there who can just give you a hand, just let you know where things are, because it's quite a daunting experience. So it's the same when PAC came. It was just like having another Brit on our little team, and I'd known him already from England. One of my first matches was a 6-man tag for Mark Sloan, me, PAC, and another Stevie Lynn, maybe something like that.
That's right.
Yeah, it was the three of us against the three chavs, and that was like one of my first matches. And then whatever it was, 7 years later, we tagged together in NXT, which is kind of weird that it goes around. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I watch stand there in the tags on the apron and just forget the whole match because I'm just watching this guy perform, and you know how good he is, and just getting blown away by how good he is in the ring. And yeah, it's just like same with Haskins, just being in tags with them and just being able to be that close to the action and just watching how they wrestle. You can pick a lot of things up from them. So it was a great experience for me, and he's a really good guy and a nice guy, and yeah, he's one of the best I've ever seen between the ropes.
Cool. And they put you in the tournament to crown the first ever NXT Tag Champs. But on the way, you defeated 3MB, Heath, and Drew McIntyre. And I've been McIntyre fan for such a long time, and to finally see him at the top is great. But how proud are you, of your fellow countrymen, basically, achieving what he has?
It's like I said about Big E, he's just such a down to earth person. I can't. It's just there's no ego. A lot of wrestlers, and it can't be helped sometimes. If you get quite famous, so you do really well for yourself, you do get, I guess, a bit of an ego, and that's just anything in life, and you can't help that sometimes with people. But I've known Drew a long time, and I've seen him for different parts of his career, and he's never changed. He's always been the same Drew. It doesn't matter if he's the top of his game or if he's, back when I first met him for All Star, he's just always been the same guy. He's always been approachable. He's always been a top quality pro. Again, he's one of those people that you can just learn a lot from, the way he acts outside the ring, just like Doug. The way they conduct themselves in the changing room, the way they approach the rest of the boys.
Cool. And in the finals, you defeated the Wyatt family, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. So, which they've gone. Well, Luke Harper, like he's went to AEW now, which he's doing things. Brody Lee, for everyone who's forgot his WWE name, he's in the AEW now. He's doing well. But when management told you, right, we're going to put the belts on you, like, how did you feel like being told, like, right, you're going to be our first ever tag team champions?
Yeah, it's crazy, and we were like thrown together last minute because the Ascension were taking out the tournament, so we never even thought we'd go past the first round. So it was, and that was probably, to be honest, was just down to us performing well, because I don't think we were planned to ever win it, you know, let alone beat 3MB. And because we worked hard and put on good performances, we were given the belts. You know, I think it was just down to hard work. I don't, maybe it was the plan all along. I'd be very, very surprised if it was. I was pretty sure the Wyatts were meant to win that tournament, and they were going to get put up on TV. And we were just very fortunate we were in the right place and did our jobs best we could and got the belts. And we were about to skyrocket from there. You know, I was getting a call to ask what tracksuit size I was, and we were going to go up and go up on the main roster. It was all set to go ahead. And obviously, I imagine the next thing you're going to bring up is my injury, and I end up blowing my knee out on a house show against Bray Wyatt and tore my ACL. And that was 9 months on the shelf, and everything was scraps. But
right, I didn't like. Obviously, I was going to get to the injury, but I didn't realize it was going to call you up so soon to the main roster.
Yeah.
So
6 months being there. I hadn't been there very long. Ben, PAC had probably been there like 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
And that was it. We were about to go up. You know, we won the belts and we had our picture on the training school wall, and it was just we were going up to the main roster. And it was meant to be go to WrestleMania for the Access that year in New York, and we'd been to the Royal Rumble in Phoenix already to do Access. And I was looking forward to going to WrestleMania, because obviously I've never been. I never have been even now, but I'd like to have gone. And it's just one of those things. We just did a house show, and we went for like a body slam, land behind. I landed badly on my knee. I went down. Adam Rose came out and finished the match for me in a tag match. And I sort of tried to just pretend it was fine. They prodded my knee around backstage, and I just said it was, it's fine. So I'm all good. Drove my car back home. Thought I got away with it. Went to train the next day and just stomped my foot down, and then the meniscus in between your knee just flipped over inside my knee. And I went straight down. I had an MRI scan, and then they called me and just said, you'll be out for 9 months with an injury, and all the plans were sort of scrapped. And I felt more sorry for PAC in a way, because again, he was about to go up there, and because of my injury, he was there for a lot longer than he should have been, and had to wait to go back up properly.
Right. And what's it like recovering from a bad injury? I mean, for example, like last November, I had to put up some Christmas lights, and my ladder slipped and I fell.
Yeah.
And I ended up like fracturing my spine. And I couldn't move for like weeks. And like the recovery, like I got, it was fortunately it was a stable fracture, and like I recovered quite well. Like I can still feel it now, but I can do what I need to do now, which is no problem. But so I understand like what kind of recovery you have to do, but for someone like in such a physical demanding job in wrestling, and you're recovering for like 9 months, like it must just like play on your mind, just being sort of thinking this thing would heal.
Yeah, it's not the pain of the injury, and if anyone has torn their knee ligaments and stuff, I know it's a lot of pain post surgery. But it wasn't the pain that got to me; it was the mental games. Really, no, I just couldn't do anything. I was sort of going my crutches down to the gym in the place where I lived, like a little gym built in. And I'd go down and do some chin-ups and some chest press. And then someone saw me in the gym one day, and they told the office, and the office were telling me not to train. I needed to be resting, but I couldn't rest. You know, I'm there in Florida. I'm away from all my friends and family. You know, and I sort of like, when I got signed, I'd left Devon thinking I was going there for the rest of my life to be a major star. And I was so close to going up to the main road. And to have it sort of taken away from me, I was just dying to get back at it and just get back up that ladder again and get up there and get on the main roster. And I just couldn't do anything for 9 months, and you're subjected to sort of sitting there watching the training, and then you might be able to do a few side steps for band around your knees, try and get it warmed up. And it's very difficult mentally, and that's probably my downfall, was the injury. Not so much the way it affected my in-ring performances, but just the way that, you know, it sort of messed me up a little bit mentally to deal with. And my attitude slipped, and it's what cost me my job in the end, I think. But I was young, I guess.
Yeah, like as you made your return, but like within weeks, you was released, which I was shocked because Like I thought there was quite well, especially for UK fans. Like there was a lot of hype, thinking, right, he's finally coming back. He's been out for so long. Let's see what I can do. And they put you in a couple of matches, but then within weeks, like you were gone. So what was the reason? Was it like, you know, they didn't trust that, you know, your injury might play up again, or was there another reason why they decided to release you?
I don't know. My first match back on TV, I went over really strong on the lads, and they didn't film that episode, so it didn't get aired. I don't know why. There was some problems with the cameras, so that was kind of like, so here we go, another thing's gone wrong for me. And then I hurt my back at training one day, and I remember I had this big knee brace on. You know, like Steve Austin used to wear these big metal knee braces, and I couldn't do the vaults very well. Brookside was training us, and I took the knee brace off and I just slammed it into the floor. And it wasn't because I was pissed off with Robbie. I was pissed off with myself. You know, I'd gone from being I never said I'm a great athlete, but I was a decent athlete, to not really being able to do these vaults. And that was really messing with my head. And that got me in a bit of trouble the way I acted that one day. And then from there, I don't know, it was just me and Martin Stone were put together, Danny Birch put together, and we did this sort of Cockney gangster thing, which was doing well on house shows. They didn't want to pull the trigger on NXT to use that gimmick. And yeah, this is what it is, you know. I definitely didn't conduct myself well at certain times, and I should have done a lot more, but it's just hindsight, you know. I can't change the past, so there's no point in worrying about it. And I'm just thankful I had a couple of years there and met a lot of cool people, and I had that experience in my life, I guess. So yeah, it was really good.
Because I think they released mine around the same time, or not long afterwards.
Same day.
Same day was it?
Exactly the same day. It was me, him, Eddie Guerrero's daughter, and Mason Ryan. And Mason Ryan, we got released the same day, the four of us.
He was a big shock. He was, because I mean, just look at the guy.
Yeah, big mistake. I think really. I think it's you need some freaks in the business. I think it's really missing them. So that was a big mistake, I think, from them. But I don't know what it was. And then with Mason Ryan, he did everything they asked him to do. You know, they were trying to make him be something that I don't think he's meant to be. They were trying to make him be very athletic and do a lot of more high risk maneuvers, which just didn't suit him. He stood out as it was, and the way he looked.
Powerhouse.
They could have used him better, I think, but I don't know. They know better than me. You know, they're $1 billion company. So.
Yeah. And not long after this, you appeared on the second season of British Boot Camp, like Impact Wrestling, and because I watched the first season, which I loved. I recently interviewed the Blossom Twins, and at that time, and then season 2 came along, and I watched it years ago, but I rewatched it recently, and I'm thinking the amount of talent that was on the shows, you know, gone on to like 4 different companies, and you came on, and you and Martin again, and made it for your tryouts, and which was great, and I thought you had a really good match, but they decided not to take you up, and all respect to Grado, love Grado, he's a great personality, but I'm like, you're putting Grado through, you're not putting Joe. I mean, have you seen the guy? Look at him. So.
Well, I think that's the old not being able to cut a promo thing that was haunting me again. You know, I've never been good at it. I've never been interested. As a kid, I was a Benoit fan and a Guerrero fan, and Angle and people. I like their ring work, or Finlay. I've never got drawn to The Rock or Austin or any of these people. I just love watching pure wrestling, and I should always practice my promos better. But I've got no sort of natural charisma like a Grado. You know, I'm just a wrestler. I just go in there and I let my wrestling do the talking. And I like to think in some ways I'm a wrestler's wrestler. You know, a lot of the internet won't go crazy about me, but the boys in the back will respect me if I turn up, and they'll know that they're in for a hard match if they're on with me. But that doesn't translate well to TV. You know, like they don't want you that on TV.
Yeah, but like even as a major company, I mean, that's why we have managers. If like, you know, you've got a big guy, you know, who say struggles with these promos, it's why you give him a manager, like, to help him. I mean, look at Brock Lesnar. Like, I can't imagine he cut many promos when he began with. Piled them up, 8 minutes. You know, he became what he became, and that's why. That's the thing. What we actually miss wrestling managers.
Definitely, but I'm not Brock Lesnar. So if I was Brock Lesnar, it might have been a different story at the boot camp. But I'm not a Lesnar. But we'll see. And also, to be honest with you, everything, you know, I look back at it, I just think, well, you know, say I'd gone, because the boot camp was pretty much as soon as I came back to England. If that had gone well and they'd offered me a contract, well, I mean, I've spent the last 6 years of All-Star Wrestling, and I've learned more at All-Star than I've learned anywhere in the world. You know, they're, to me, the best wrestlers in the world. And if I'd gone to TNA or something and they had given me a contract, I wouldn't have had the last 6 years experience with Brian Dixon.
Exactly.
So I think, well, everything works out for a reason. So I mean, it's made me almost a better wrestler staying in England because, as a kid, I'd watched All Star live and I'd been there at a very young age when I first started wrestling, and I'd always sort of thought in my head I'd love to be part of this team and be able to be full time with them. And that was a big deal for me. And I won their heavyweight belt 3 years ago or something, and that was, as much as NXT tag belts obviously meant a lot to me, that meant more. Winning that belt was the biggest thing I've ever won. And when I was a 16-year-old going there to referee the shows, I never thought I'd be the All-Star champion. It was like the land of the giants. So to win their title belt was the biggest one I've ever won.
Yeah, the British scene, like the past 10, 12 years even, it's picked up so much, and it's great. And seeing All Stars still doing so well, and all these other it's just it's great. And once everything calms down with all the lockdown and COVID, we can start getting these shows back. And that's probably the one thing I regret, is not going to as many British shows, which I would have liked. But once it gets back to normal, I would love to go back to the shows.
What I love with British wrestling is the contrast in audiences, and you don't get that, I think, anywhere else in the world, because I've not seen it in Japan. I don't think they really get it in America or anything, but in England, you can have such a contrast in where you perform. I wrestled for Rev Pro at the York Hall, and then I might wrestle at Butlins for All Star, and there's no difference in how hard you work. You work just as hard, maybe even harder at Butlins, because they're not a wrestling audience, but the way the crowd reacts to you are completely different, because at one environment you've got the quite knowledgeable wrestling fans at York Hall. At Butlins you've got families on holiday who aren't paying for a ticket, they're just wandering past, and a lot of them don't even like wrestling, so you're trying to convert people that don't even like it into enjoying what you're doing in the ring. So it's a complete contrast in crowds, and that's why I think England is the best place for any wrestler to come and learn the business, because you have to learn every different aspect and every different style and how to interact with every different type of person in order to be successful here. So it's really good.
Yeah, I remember attending the shows in Butlins when I was a kid. Me and my kid, we used to love watch them after. It used to be on every day, and so we used to just walk over watch them. We used to love them so much.
Yeah, and you're not paying for a ticket. So I've always thought that Butlins is one of the hardest places to get yourself over, really, because you're wrestling in front of an audience that maybe a lot of the dads and mums don't even want to be there. They just drag their kid there. So if you can win them over and entertain them for an hour show, you're doing a hell of a job, because to entertain a wrestling fan, it is difficult now because they're so knowledgeable, but they are paying for a ticket and they have come to watch wrestling. Whereas the people that are just wandering past the skyline, to make them actually stop and watch your match is difficult, and it's a real good skill to have.
Yeah. And in 2015, you reunited with Haskins again, so that must have been something you missed, when you was in America, not tagging with Haskins so much. So it must have been great to come back and start tagging with him again.
Yeah, I remember the first match we tagged back together was against the Hooligans at the York Hall, and it did an angle. I think me and Martin were tagging before that, and they jumped us in the ring, and then Martin wasn't there for the next one. He went back to the States, and it was I had to find a partner. And you don't know if people are going to remember our tag team, because it was a long time before that. It was 4 or 5 years since we teamed together, and it was a really good ovation when he came out, and we were sort of reunited for that tag match. And I remember it being a real good match with Zach and Roy, and really tearing it up in New York all that night. And that was cool, good experience. But Haskins, like I say, he's just a different level. So just trying to be able to keep up what they're doing and trying to hang with them, really. I'm just worried when I get in there, I can't do it as fast as those guys can. So I'm just trying to keep up with the tempo. But yeah, it was good.
Cool. And after this as well, they brought back the sport. So and a lot of there was quite a few nice, good British talents. And did they ever get in contact with you, to come onto the show?
No, they never got into contact with me. And to be honest, I'm sure they just weren't interested in me. But I always, in the back of my head, that Brian Dixon lost the Butlins camps to NGW. Right. I won't go into any kind of detail how that was done or why he lost them. I don't want to get involved with the politics on this. But Butlins or NGW, or it was Alex Shane at the time, so he rang me when they got them. He knew I was one of Brian's boys, but he said, "Listen, what would it take to get you back on Butlins? And we'd like to have you on our team and stuff." And I said, "Alex, give me an hour to think about it." And I just put the phone down. I thought about it, and I thought, well, he's offering me, I've been honest, a bit more money than Brian was paying me. And I thought, well, I was thinking, it would be nice. I enjoy doing Butlins, and And I knew Brian wouldn't really care, but I just thought about the boys in the back, and I thought about sort of Tony Spitfire and Dino and all these lads that have given their lives to Brian really as wrestlers. And I just couldn't walk back into that changing room having kind of worked for the opposition. So I rang him back and I said, I appreciate your offer and thank you very much for thinking of me. But out of my loyalty to the boys more than Brian, I don't want to come. You know, I'm still going to stay where I am, and I'm going to stay with All Star. And you know, I'm not in any way saying that's why I didn't get picked for World of Sport, but I know Alex was involved with it, and it probably didn't look good on me. But whatever, you know, my friendship sometimes means more to me than a good paycheck. Do you know what I mean? And the fact that I can call sort of Spitty and Dean and James and these boys that are All-Star boys, and I can call them sort of my friends, means more to me than a nice payday for a couple of tapings. So
yeah, and I think it was around about a time, or even a few months before World Sport, Travis passed away, which was terrible. Like it was not just for the British wrestling world, it like whole wrestling world in general. Like, how did you feel when he passed away?
I mean, we never close. Like, if I've been brutally honest with you, I've met him a handful of times. You know, we weren't close friends, but obviously still hit me because he's a young lad and he's very similar to me because he's a wrestler, and it lets you realise that, you know, life is very precious and we should be very thankful for what we've got and the opportunities we get, and not to don't take anything for granted. You know, just understand how lucky we are that we get to wrestle and do this thing that we wanted to do as children, and you know, make everything out of it. And yeah, it just puts everything into perspective. And a lot of his close friends are friends of mine, so just seeing how it affected them was very sad. Yeah. Hopefully, it made us a bit more aware of just sort of treating our bodies better, and you know, just being a bit more careful with how we act. You know, not how we act, but you know, how we look after our bodies. And yeah. What else can I say? Really, it was a very sad time, but yeah.
Cool. And obviously, NXT UK is a thing. So, what's been your thoughts on it, like up to now?
Yeah, it's great. You know, it's really good. Not really many thoughts. I'd love to be involved. You know, I've made that clear to some of the boys that are there, and I've wrestled a few of the lads that have contracts, and they all say to me, you know, when are you going to come and join us at NXT UK? And they said, well, no one spoke to me, you know, and I've made it clear to them that I'd love to go there. And I was sort of told to get in touch with William Regal just before the lockdown. He wants to have a chat with me, and it could be to say you're never going to come back, or it could be to say come along for a tryout. But I don't know. But I've sent a few emails to him and just playing that game now, just waiting to see what he says and seeing if we can line up some kind of tryout. And you know, I obviously don't expect to walk in there. I'd love to just go there and just do the same as everybody else and just go put from my paces. I'm only 33 and I'm in good condition. But I feel like I can definitely go with the rest of them and just want another shot. But like I say, I acted badly at times in Florida, and that could be the reason why he's calling me, is just to say it's not going to happen. But even if that was the case, it'd be nice to know where you stand and not to think about it. But
to be honest, Joe, though, I do personally think because of lockdown and COVID and everything, even though WWE still produces shows, I still think it has put everything still, for example, because I know, because I, for example, have a working relationship with Impact Wrestling, and I know there's people who they would like to sign, who they're waiting until how COVID comes about, how it finishes and that. And I can imagine it's the same thing with NXT UK and even NXT over in America and that, they're just waiting to see what the state of the world's going to be before they start signing any more talents or things like that. So I personally think myself, because you are a great talent, you've got a great look and everything, and like I said, you've worked with a lot of the guys who's on NXT UK. I think it might be a case just waiting how COVID, sorts itself out, and then I'm pretty sure you'll be getting a phone call pretty soon.
I hope so, but I don't know. When I came back from America, I didn't. When they released me, I was kind of happy about being released because I hadn't seen my son for a long time. He was born when I first moved out to America, so to go back and see him was really cool. And I didn't think it really affected me, but I think it probably did affect me. I just didn't realise it at the time. When I came back, I had a terrible attitude in England, and I was very grumpy in the changing rooms. I think it was the fact that I'd come from WWE and I was coming back to a lot of the halls that I thought I'd left. I thought I'd sort of gone away and I wasn't going to come back. And it's kind of humbling to come back to some of those halls and be back to where you were before you went away, and just sort of bite the bullet and realise that dream that you've had is gone now. You just got to come back and do what you did before. And I did have a bad attitude, and I definitely would have, conducted myself badly, and that will sort of pay a price now, because people that are there now, some of the guys that I probably didn't treat very well when I first came back, and all they've got to say to the coaches there is, "Oh no, he's a bad guy to have around," and that's all you need to never get a job there. So
Yeah,
it's one of those things. But like I said before, you can't change what happened in the past. You just got to try and build the bridges and show people that you're not that person anymore and that you are different. So yeah, we'll see.
I'm sure. I'm sure it'll work out. I promise. I'm sure it'll work out. But one of the things you have done, which not many people can say, you've went over to Japan and proven to be successful in old Japan. So what was it like getting the phone call like, "We want you in Japan"? It must have been wow, Japan.
Yeah, I had a message in my junk folder on Facebook from the All Japan office, and I never checked my junk folder on Facebook, because there's some reason I did that day, and it was maybe a couple of weeks old. Yeah. I just ripped back and they said, "Would you be interested in doing a Champions Carnival?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, of course I would. Definitely wouldn't." They put it to the office who I was, some pictures and stuff, and they said, "Yeah, we'd like to bring you out, and this is the money we're going to pay you," which is a lot more money than I get in England. I thought this is really good, and nice flights and a nice hotel and all this, because it's All Japan was a big company, so they treat you really well. And went out there, and I just thought, this is great. This is 4-week wrestling in Japan. They won't want to see me again. They've got these superstars out there. They ain't going to ever want to see me again. But I'll go there for 4 weeks, and at least I can say, "Oh, I did Japan. I've done Japan. I've wrestled in Japan." Before the end of the tour, they just come up to me and said, "There's 2 more tours. We want to bring you on. I want to bring you back in a month's time for a week, and then back in the month after that for like 2 weeks." And I went for 5 tours last year. I spent more time in Japan than I did in England. I was there a lot, and I'm very fortunate that my fiance is. Well, the reason she's my fiance is because she's a woman that lets me do that. She lets me go away most of the year to Japan and fulfill my dream, really. And she stands by me and supports me. So I'm very fortunate to have her, and just that whole experience. I've wrestled in a lot of countries in my career, and I've had a lot of opportunities, and there's nothing comes close to Japan. I just absolutely adore the culture and the people, and the way they respect the business, and the way you're treated as a professional athlete is just everything every wrestler would ever want. And it's just been an incredible experience. And I was meant to be there for this year's Champions Carnival. Obviously, that got postponed, and we couldn't get out there. And I can't fly there at the moment. They won't let us into the country, so I'm just waiting now to hopefully get back out there next year. And yeah, it's incredible. And to me, they're just wrestlers. There's no, like I said, I can't cut a promo. I can't do an interview. But there's no need to there, because when I do a promo, it's all dubbed or subtitled, because most of them don't speak English in Japan, so you're just sort of shouting at the microphone a bit. So you've got to let your wrestling do the talking. And I feel like from my time with All Star, my time around James and Spitty and Dean and these boys, I've learned that British style, to a moderate standard, not as good as them, but to a good enough standard that when I do it out there, it does get a great reaction from the crowd. And I can do stuff out there that they've never ever seen before, and they really love it. And look at people like Pete Roberts, who was a big star in All Japan, or Davey Boy and Dynamite, who were big stars there, and doing that British style. They haven't seen it for such a long time. When I do it, some of the old office boys there, and sort of takes them back to those days. And they go, or Steve Wright and people, and they go, "Oh, I remember Steve Wright doing that reversal. Oh, it's so great to see that again 25 years later, So it's done really well for me. And it doesn't hurt your body. We took some of these sort of high risk styles that you see now, the sort of strong style stuff. It's brilliant. And some of these high flying moves are fantastic. I'm not knocking those boys at all, because I can't do it, but it takes a hell of a toll on your body. And Will Ospreay is a world class wrestler. He's outstanding, but I've seen Will in a lot of pain at times, where it has taken a lot of toll on his body, and it's something that the sacrifice that he makes to the crowd to do that style. Yeah, the British style, it doesn't really hurt my body. I'm only doing rolls, or I'm just doing these little reversals on that, and I can do that, and I can do that 20 shows in 25 days like we do in Japan, and I'm fine on the bus. It doesn't hurt me at all. So it's a good style to learn and to be able to do.
Yeah, and one of the main guys you tagged with was Yoshitatsu. He was in WWE as well, which I always thought he was an underrated worker as well. So it's been great, tagging with him, because he's very talented as well.
Yeah, and I've known Yoshi from Florida, so I knew him already, and he speaks good English, so he's perfect for me, because he can translate what a lot of the Japanese boys say, because most of them don't speak any English, so I need him to sort of translate to me what they want from the match or what they want to do and stuff. And to be honest with you, he sells a lot of merchandise. He's quite big in Japan, so to help my merchandise sales. And my merchandise sales is my beer money. I try and keep my wrestling money, and that's what I take home with me. And the merchandise is for beers with the boys. So if we're selling good merchandise, selling a lot of t-shirts, it's a good night out with Joe Doring and these lads. So it's all good with me.
Cool. So and then obviously COVID put a stop to like everything. I don't think I did. Like I didn't expect how much of an effect it would have on the world as what it is, like COVID. And how have you like coped with it? Because it's just like stopping shows and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. There's no shows, so no income, and then I work as a personal trainer, and the gyms were closed. So I was working as a fitness coach. I moved to Salisbury in January, so I literally moved here and then had a lockdown. So my job as a fitness coach was scrapped because the gyms was closed. So I didn't have any income really. I was furloughed from the gym, but it wasn't much money because we're only on a 12-hour contract, so it's like 400 quid a month. So it's not enough to pay the bills. So I just had to get a job. So I just started working in a retail store, just stacking the shelves, and I'm still doing it now. I do 3 days there and 3 days in the gym, and I do some PT on the side. So I'm doing a lot of work. But I'm used to working a hard schedule. But I'm sort of back in the gym as a receptionist, and I'm stacking shelves in the store. And I remember an incident in the store where a couple of young lads come in. They're looking down the aisle at me, and I'm putting the kitchen knives or whatever it was on the hooks. And these two boys are looking at me, and one of them gets the courage to come up and speak to me, and he sort of tapped me on the shoulder and went, "You used to be a wrestler?" I said, "Yeah, I am a wrestler." "You were on NXT Tag Team Champion?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I was. Yeah, a long time ago. Oh, we used to really enjoy watching you on NXT." And you just think, "Christ, that's pretty cool," but at the same time, like, no, not a knock in any way on people that work in retail stores. It's a hell of a hard job, but you kind of think, bloody hell, I've gone from WWE on Sky Sports to stacking the shelves here in the store. But maybe it's a good test of the man, you humble enough to just do the work and pay your bills. So
and like I said, once everything starts easing up, hopefully get back into the routine of what you want to do. And one of the things I did want to talk about is you're starting to go around the wrestling schools now. In fact, they're starting to reopen again, and you said you enjoyed coaching, so something I really wanted to talk about. So how much have you enjoyed doing that?
Yeah, I've always done seminars for a long time for different little schools, but it's nice to be able to actually coach wrestling again. I had a wrestling school in Devon when I was young. When I was early 20s, we started a thing called the DWA down in Devon, where wrestler called Dick Riley and PJ Jones, some very good wrestlers that come out of the school that I taught. Me and the guy called the UK Dominator taught them. So I have got experience in training, but obviously I know a lot more now than I did when I was 22. I've had all that time in America and time in Japan, and all that sort of knowledge to pass on. And I get very passionate when I train people. I really love to teach, and it's a real passion of mine. That's probably why I'm a personal trainer as well, because I enjoy teaching people and seeing improvements in people and helping them reach their goals. And it's very difficult. I mean, like I said, there's more schools now, so I guess it's easier in a way, but it was difficult when I started to be a wrestler. I never dreamed of going to America. And it's just, and growing up on an isolated farm and then ending up in America in Tampa, wrestling Roman Reigns on house shows. You didn't expect that to happen when you were a kid on the farm. So it's letting some of these people know at the schools that, anything's possible for any of you, and don't ever think that just because you're too small or you're never going to make it to the big time. Anyone can get there, and I'm proof of that too. And just use me as the example that you can do it as well. It's all about effort and hard work, and if you're willing to make the sacrifice and put the work in, you'll get there as well. So just trying to let people realise that and let them know that. And I've had a few people at some of these seminars or some of the schools that I teach at, they come to me and go, "Do you think I've ever got a chance of making it?" And you just sort of say to them, "Of course you have. You just got to." Just keep working hard and keep improving and keep a good head about you. Don't be an idiot backstage, and just be respectful.
Cool. It's all right. So we're down to the final segment of the show. So it's called that 90s Wrestling Podcast. So personality test. I'm going to throw out some 90s based questions to you, and we'll see what we can get.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So I know you said you was on the farm and you didn't watch much TV, but I'll ask you anyway. What was your favorite 90s movie?
See, this is what I mean. I don't know what 90s movie. Do you know a film that I really liked as a kid? It's a bit random, but I liked a film called Swingers. It was Vince Vaughn in. John Favreau, I think, directed it. He's in it as well, but it's a very random film. But I think it might be late 90s, maybe early 2000s. But for some reason, that was one of my favourite films when I was younger. I don't know why. It's about sort of a couple of boys going away to Vegas for a lads' night out in Vegas. But Maybe that was the writing on the wall for my NXT days. But I don't know.
Your favorite 90s TV show?
God, again, I used to watch Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as a kid. Is that 90s? I don't know.
That's 90s.
That's 90s. There you go. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was pretty good when I was younger. I remember that.
Good.
90s. Biker Mice from Mars. That might be 90s. Yeah, I remember that too. That was good.
I loved it, and it's funny because whenever I ask like your wrestlers these questions, and because we're about the same sort of age, I'm 31, so we're a similar sort of age. And when I ask all these wrestlers like the TV shows in the 90s, I'm like, well, it's weird, like knowing we had the same taste in like TV shows and stuff.
Yeah. There you go.
Your favorite 90s wrestler?
Yeah, again, I probably started watching it in the 2000s. Benoit is my favorite wrestler of all time. So I guess Benoit and his work in the 90s, especially his stuff like the Super J Cups in Japan, was as a wrestler, something that I would study. So he's a massive inspiration of mine. Another wrestler that just stands out to me is Bret Hart. I'm a big Bret Hart fan. You know, I think again, I didn't watch him as a kid because I didn't watch wrestling as a kid. But having looked back at tapes and reading his book and that kind of stuff, I can really begin to understand how good he really was. And I think for me, in terms of 90s wrestlers, Bret Hart was someone that would stand out to me. He was one of the best.
And last one, your favorite 90s match?
Oh, Christ. I like Bret Hart and Owen Hart from WrestleMania 10. I mean, that's a good match. It's cool, you know, just to watch those guys go at it like that. Yeah, I don't know. 90s match. I like the Finlay and Regal from WCW. Beat the crap out of each other. Just it was good, you know. It's nice to see British guys doing well. It's the only time you see British guys being successful. It's good to me. I don't know the matches. There's loads of good matches, isn't there? I don't know. The Iron Man, Bret and Shawn was good.
Cool. Yeah, I've got the same attitude like when it comes to British wrestlers because people say to me, "Oh, you're biased because you just want the British guys to win," and I'm like, "Well, yeah."
Because we're English. So we want to see. Yeah, you want to see British guys do well, you know. Like when I read these autobiographies, I've recently really got into reading wrestlers' autobiographies. I never used to read books, and I started when I was going to Japan. I'd start buying books because a lot of the time you're on the bus for a long time, where you're in the hotels on your own, you need something to do. So I'm reading these books, and I always try and find books where there's things where I can relate to. So like Jericho's book, or especially Regal's book. You know, I just love it because a lot of these places they're talking about, I've been to. You know, a lot of these guys when they've been to Japan and Roppongi and stuff in Tokyo, I've been there. I know all about these guys, and they're speaking about people that I've met or I know. So I really enjoy reading some of those books, and yeah, it's good.
That's the thing. Since I've started this show, like I really want to speak to a lot of the British wrestlers. So I've spoke to yourself, the Blossom Twins, who's left wrestling now, Nick Alders, which I had a great time, and Tom Latimer. I think he might be coming on the show soon.
Can't good. Yeah.
He's got such a great story as well, and I always like seeing my guys go over there and succeed. So you know, it's just great. But yeah. Joe, it's been a great chat. Do you want to flick your social media where they can find you and also your wrestling seminars?
My social media is j.redman87 on Instagram and I don't even know, Joel Redman Pro on Twitter. But you know, I'm gonna listen, and I know we're meant to be good at social media in this day and age, and I'm just not good. I really apologise for that. I don't understand why anyone want to watch me working out in the gym, and I don't want to take shirtless pictures in the changing room mirrors. The gym I go to and the gym I work at is a very spit and sawdust gym, and the idea of even wearing a vest in there would be frowned upon. So setting up a camera to film myself do a bench press is a bit of a no-go, I'm afraid. But so don't expect too much good content. And when me and Michelle go for dinner, I know a lot of the boys like to post a lot of their personal life on social media, and I know that is kind of the way it's done now, and they should be able to do that. And I know the crowd like to see what we do, but I am a little bit old school, and when me and Michelle go for dinner, and in not a bad way, it's my own personal time, and I don't want to be posting our private life for people to see. Really. So I will do my best to improve. So if you want to follow me on one of those things, I hope that I'll improve the content a little bit and show you a bit more footage of what I do day to day. But they don't expect too much from me.
Cool. I'm the same, to be honest, Joe. Like I basically have me Twitter and Instagram just purely for this show. But, like, family things like my wife and my kids, like I just don't post it. It's just like that's my private.
Exactly. Things like Facebook, I can put it Facebook on private, and I can make it a bit more just for my close friends to see. But you know, I just there's certain things that you want to have as your own little private world that you don't need people to know about. And I think it kills the magic of wrestling. You know, I didn't want to see Hulk Hogan pissed up in a bar with his mates. You know, you want to see Hulk Hogan as this icon and this superhero that came out and beat up the baddies. So I think wrestling maybe should still be that way a little bit, and there should be a bit of mystique about us. But
I agree.
It's all changed a bit, isn't it?
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's been a great chat, Joe. Well, thanks very much for getting back to me. I think I read the message like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, he's responded, and it was like, oh,
yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
It's another one of those junk folder deals, I'm afraid. It was in the, I think because we're not friends on Instagram at the time or something, it just went onto the junk folder bit, and I just looking in today, and I saw it today, and I thought, oh no, I've got to get back to you quick, because I do like doing these podcasts. It's nice. It's great. Obviously, I appreciate coming on the show, and it's great exposure for me, and that's what,
Thank you.
You know, we all as wrestlers appreciate what you're doing and the rest of the guys are doing with these podcasts, because there isn't any wrestling at the moment. Michelle doesn't want to watch it or hear about it anymore. She's sick of the backseat of it after 6 years. So it's nice to be able to have a chat with someone about wrestling and just get some exposure, much needed exposure at this time.
Oh yeah, and like if you want to come on again, you know, I'll be more than grateful for you to come on again, and I guarantee you we will definitely be seeing you on the NXT UK soon once the world becomes normal again. I'm pretty sure that, because you're great talent, you got the look, and yeah, I can definitely see it happen.
Well, fingers crossed. Let's get out of this nonsense first and get back to shows.
We will. And seeing that I'm living not too far from you as well, once I know where your schools are, I've got 3 boys, 6, 4 and 3. I might have to sign them up.
The wrestling school is in Salisbury. So if you look on Facebook, it's I'm very, very fortunate that it's All-Star Wrestling South, or ASW South. I asked Brian Dixon for permission to use the All-Star name. Brian's 50th year was this year. It was a good year to choose. And he, as much as Brian won't admit it, I don't think there's that many more years left. He's in his 70s now, and Dean's got his school up in Liverpool, the All-Star school up there. But I just wanted to keep the name alive, because to me it just means so much, and have the All-Star Wrestling South was a big deal to me. Anyone that's interested in wrestling, I only teach on the mats. I have got access to a ring. I have chose not to put the ring up yet. I just want to teach guys on the mat first of all. I was taught in judo background. I think a lot of wrestling now is great, but it's quite choreographed, and I think we've lost a little bit of the art of sort of shooting a little bit and how to actually control people and wrestle on the floor. So my school is very much, it's not killer conditioning. It is conditioning. It's not going to kill you, but a lot of it is it's submission holds, takedowns, reversals, and it's all on mats. And I want to try and teach my students how to be wrestlers, and they can learn the flips and the big moves and the cool routines afterwards. But they need to get a real good fundamentals in wrestling, how to move people and how to kind of shoot almost a little bit, because it will help them a lot in their careers. So if you're interested in wrestling, it's ASW South on Facebook. Find the page, join, I'll accept you, and hit me with a message, and we'll get people down to start training.
Yep. I'll be sure to put the links in the description once this goes up on YouTube.
Great, thank you. A big help.
Thanks. Right, thanks again, Joe, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
No problems, anytime. Thank you very much.